this video, we'll feature another legendary Tayu, who is considered the highest-ranking courtesan of the 15th century. She is said to have been a disciple of Ikkyu, the poetic, erotic monk, featured in an earlier episode. There are many anecdotes about her, but she is best known as the dark, Gothic consort of the King of Hell. Let us descend together into the tortured life story of Jigoku-Tayu, the elite oiran who bedeviled the minds of powerful men. She was born into a samurai family and named Otoboshi. When she was very young, her father, a military strategist, was killed, and her brother declared missing in action after a major battle. Fearful for the safety of Otoboshi and her elder sister, their mother decided to move them to a safe place. But on the journey, they were attacked by bandits. Her mother was killed, and her sister was kidnapped after being raped. The bandits kicked little Otoboshi down to the bottom of a deep valley, simply because she was too young to sell off to yukaku houses in the pleasure quarter. A charcoal seller and his wife found the unconscious toddler. She was bruised, bleeding, and caked in mud, making her hard to miss against a blanket of virgin snow. They adopted her, but then both died suddenly when she was still only 7 years old. On her way to the local temple to fulfill her stepmother's dying wishes, she was snatched by an old woman, a professional sex trafficker. Otoboshi was reunited with kidnapped sister, whose frightening appearance and mental instability were caused by the syphilis that would soon claim what was left of her miserable life. Even so, she found the strength to encourage Otoboshi to seek out their missing brother. After the 7-year-old made a successful bid to escape, the old woman pursued her across the country. In Osaka, she was rescued, if it can be called that, by a couple who ran a brothel. And so little Otoboshi's fate was sealed, and she was left with little option but to become a prostitute. Strange as it may sound, she blamed herself for her repeated misfortune, buying into the widespread belief that she must have failed to practice key Buddhist precepts in a previous life. Assuming that she was damned for being a prostitute, Otoboshi decided to call herself Jigoku, which is Japanese for hell. She began wearing kimonos with demonic patterns, depicting scenes of torture in the underworld. A sartorial attempt to encourage her clients to repent and redeem themselves, accompanied by her silent chants to Buddha. She believed this was the only way that she could offset her sins. After she developed a particular talent for tanka poetry, her pale beauty, exceptional intelligence, and eccentric appearance catapulted her to fame. After all, men may want to marry Snow White, but in a brothel, they are looking for the wicked queen, the bad girl who stokes their ardor like a she-demon, fanning the flames of the underworld. Consequently, the name Jigoku-Tayu spread faster than a blood stain on snow. When rumors of the Bride of Hell reached the empathetic ears of Zen monk, Ikkyu, he immediately set out for the town of Sokai, to seek her out. The ironically named Fukuo-zen, practiced by Ikkyu, was a deviant form, which abandoned many of the social taboos that were blindly embraced by the mainstream. He ate meat, drank alcohol, and frequently had sex with women, including prostitutes. Rebelling against the greedy, self-serving mainstream that cared only about wealth and status. Ikkyu's earthy sense of enlightenment very quickly won an army of followers. Hearing that the iconoclastic monk was on his way, Jigoku-Tayu sent him a tanka poem. The reverse psychology, in her provocative invitation, is clear. If a monk hides away in the mountains, he dwells in their deep bosom. But here you will be near the edge of the world. With his usual, down-to-earth comfort with secular matters, Ikkyu replied, "If you don't think of yourself as a refuge, it doesn't matter whether you're deep in the mountains or buried in the secular world." After they met, Ikkyu praised her great skill as a prostitute, with another poem. Jigoku-Tayu's reply used to play on words, to conflate being condemned to hell after death with being condemned to fall in love with her. Ikkyu eagerly accepted her as a disciple, impressed by her wit and intelligence. On one occasion, Jigoku-Tayu sent her master a salacious lament that highlighted her popular appeal. "If only I could be ordained to serve the Buddha, there would be widespread salvation." Recognizing that her charms were indeed irresistible, Ikkyu's verse reply suggested that selling her 5-foot body to alleviate the cares of sentient beings was a lesser sin than those of evil monks chasing glory. He added that his famous poem about New Year characterizes the annual temple rituals as merely a milestone on the journey to hell. Take a look at this painting, which depicts New Year's Day in a brothel. The house saw it as a fabulous opportunity to double its prices. Like shrine maidens at the local temple, the younger girls wore white kimonos to welcome customers. The adult woman with the ornate kimono is Jigoku-Tayu, and the jocular monk, with a skull on the end of a bamboo pole, is Ikkyu. Ikkyu draws no distinction between the opportunism of the brothel and that of the temple, which both cash in on New Year. While you're daydreaming, he tells us, you will turn into a skeleton. In other words, one way or another, the vultures will pick you clean. But in Ikkyu's mind, the abbots claim a higher purpose than the mercenary brothel owners. And unlike indentured prostitutes, their obedient monks remain by choice. In the picture, Jigoku-Tayu is the only one not turning away from this uncomfortable truth. Towards the end of her life, Jigoku-Tayu finally found her missing brother, who had also become one of Ikkyu's disciples. Like most women who had endured the harsh life of a prostitute from early childhood, she died young. If you want to know more about the harsh life of young girls in the yukaku, please watch this earlier video. On her deathbed, comforted by Ikkyu and her long-lost brother, Jigoku-Tayu proved that her sharp wit was undimmed. She is quoted as saying, "Don't burn or bury my body. Just leave it in the fields to tickle the belly of starving dogs." On the face of it, this denial of self and the wish to provide sustenance for starving creatures is a profoundly Buddhist statement. But the Kurosawa film, Stray Dog, is just one example of starving hounds being used as a metaphor for desperate men. And although Kurosawa was a fan of Shakespeare, it's likely that a great mind like Jigoku-Tayu had made that connection much earlier. In Jack the Ripper's East End of London, "Tickle your tummy, governor," was a pickup line used by street-walking prostitutes to sidestep laws against procurement. Perhaps the meaning here is similar. Either way, it's clear that Jigoku-Tayu is acknowledging that all anyone ever wanted from her was her 5-foot body. During the Edo period of the 17th to 19th centuries, the new capital was a divided city. 70% of the land was occupied by the ruling samurai class and was known as Yamanote, which lends its name to modern Tokyo's circular overland railway line. But the East End, the home of ordinary people, and the commercial center of a merchant class that would soon surpass the wealth and power of the samurai, was known as Shitamachi. The word "iki," which means cool, emerged from this area to describe a cultural explosion in art, fashion, and consumer goods. Throughout this period, Jigoku-Tayu became an incredibly popular subject for kabuki plays, ukiyo-e prints, and books. Hans Holbein, The Younger's Dance of Death prints, with similar mocking skeletons, coincide with the beginning of a similar transition from feudal to commercial power in 17th century Europe. And perhaps Jigoku-Tayu, in her skull-ornamented kimonos, became an equally potent symbol of the battle against a hypocritical clergy, dutifully preaching the suffocating austerity and self-recrimination that propped up hereditary oligarchs. Kawanabe Kyosai, a painter celebrated for his genius by contemporaries, made several telling portraits of Jigoku-Tayu. In one of the most famous works, Enma, who is said to be the king of hell, looks on passively as his mistress checks her appearance in the mirror he uses to judge the dead by determining their true self. In another, she is decorating the underworld, using Enma as a convenient stepladder. This would be a deeply shocking image for male aristocrats, who automatically assumed that they held absolute superiority, and every woman should fall at their feet. Of course, Kyosai also painted portraits of Ikkyu, and several works with infamous pair together. Eventually, Kyosai adopted the name Gaki, or painting devil. In every religion, devils are the rebels who test the status quo, and one way or another, make the case for change. Jigoku-Tayu, a beautiful Yoshua oiran, who took to wearing Gothic kimonos, was soon thought to be the second coming of Jigoku-Tayu. She had a passionate affair with Sakyoku Yoshitoshi, a popular painter, who designed most her clothes. After failing to grab the attention of an emerging tycoon, it is said that she cut off her own little finger and sent it to him. Perhaps he was also a stray dog that desperately needed his tummy tickled or his ego stroked. Like all iconic legends, there have been so many fictional accounts of Jigoku-Tayu that we can't be certain what is true, or if in fact, she ever actually existed at all. But 800 years after she is said to have lived, she continues to fascinate people, and appears in manga, on fashion items, and at cosplay gatherings. The relationship between sex and death is a perennial theme in global literature and art. And the allure of the femme fatale is alive and well in modern popular culture. But something about Jigoku-Tayu's witty meditations on sex and power suggests she was very real. No doubt she will continue to haunt Japanese culture for many years to come, since many of the hypocrisies that she raged against have survived the transition from feudalism to market democracy. So, if you're someone who likes to speak truth to power, and you're looking for that perfect Halloween costume, why not celebrate Hell's courtesan? After all, there's nothing quite like a bit of f*** you Zen. And nothing ever changes for the better, without the occasional monster to draw attention to where we're going so horribly wrong. Let us know how you celebrate Halloween in the comments below. Consider haunting this channel with a subscription so that you don't miss it. One more thing before you go.